So hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We have our audience this morning is a bit mixed. We have people from Ukraine who've been displaced. We have refugees from places outside of Ukraine. We have representatives from the organizations that offer support. We have community members who are supporting individual newcomers. So thank you all so much for being here. I wanted to give you a land acknowledgement, talk about our land and how we're connected to that before we get started. And then we'll do some brief housekeeping. So let me start with the land acknowledgement. So here at the center, we respectfully acknowledge and recognize that the land on which the Mennonite New Life Center of Toronto operates and where we live, work, learn, and play is on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations across Turtle Island. And it's important for us, especially as a newcomer serving organization, to acknowledge that the lands in our treaty obligations are important. From our eastern to western to northern shores in Canada, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people. We acknowledge that the land is part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, specifically Treaty 13. And for thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improve our own understanding of Indigenous peoples, their cultures, and their histories. And as someone whose parents and grandparents, and ancestors were settlers to this land, I appreciate the care and the welcoming precedent that was set by our Indigenous peoples, and thank them for caring for the land and for opening their arms to my family and to making helping them make Canada home. This Ask MNLCT is the topic is arriving and thriving. So we are looking to help people who are refugees or displaced peoples to get settled in Canada. It's part of a series that we do called Ask MNLCT, and it's run by the center, which is the Mennonite New Life Center of Toronto. We've been around since 1983, and we help newcomers to live, work, learn, and play in Canada and to make Canada home. My name is Tracy Dochev, and I'm the moderator for today. I'm the communications manager at the center, and I'd like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, their titles and their roles, and any interpretation skills that they're able to provide to us today. I will ask Bita to go first because she is beside me on the monitor.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Bita Hedayati, and I am a registered psychotherapist with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, and I'm working as a mental health counselor and project coordinator in mental health department of Mennonite New Life Center. Today, I will provide information about mental health, and if there is any question in Farsi or in Dari, I will provide interpretation for Q&A. سلام و صبح بخیر. من بیتا هدایتی هستم، رواندرمانگر و عضو کالج رواندرمانگران اونتاریو به عنوان مشاور سلامت روان و هماهنگ کننده پروژه در بخش سلامت روان منونایت نیو لایف سنتر مشغول به فعالیت هستم. در صورتی که سوالی به زبان فارسی یا دری داشتید، من جهت ترجمه سوال و جواب در خدمتتون هستم. ممنونم. Thank you, Tracy.
Very welcome. Natalia, next.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon for those who are currently in Europe or any other part in the world. I am a settlement worker at Mennonite New Life Center. We provide settlement support to newcomers and refugees who are currently in Canada or to those who are coming to Canada. We provide orientation on different programs. We connect those to the programs. And we also provide with civic education. And we have many other programs, but I'm going to make it a little bit short. So now in Spanish, mi nombre es Natalia Rodríguez, soy trabajadora de asentamiento del Centro Menonita, y el apoyo que damos a los recién llegados o a las personas que quieren venir a Canadá, y apoyamos en su proceso de integración con diferentes programas, con información, orientación, y conectamos a las personas con los programas, servicios y con todo el apoyo que existe en la ciudad, en la provincia y en el país. Thank you, gracias.
Thank you. Viviana, next.
Hi, my name is Viviana. I work as a bridging program coordinator in the bridging programs at Menonite New Life Center. The bridging programs are programs for international trained professionals that help immigrants to transition into their career here in Canada. So there is education for several months so people can transition in and work in their field. En español, mi nombre es Viviana, coordinadora de los programas de Bridging, que sería puente, es para ayudar a los inmigrantes profesionales en algunas áreas, en algunas profesiones, para trabajar en su campo, en el campo de educación, de entrenamiento, con la experiencia que uno tenga. Gracias.
Thank you, Viviana. Ola?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ola Sanishan. I am a lawyer in Toronto. I am a partner at CGS Law, and I practice refugee, immigration law, and also family law. So thank you for having me here. I'm excited. And I also speak Ukrainian and Russian. Добрий день для тих, хто приєднується. Мене звати Оля Санишин, я працюю юристом в Торонто. І я спеціалізуюся з імміграційного права, біженства і сімейного права. Thank you. Дякую.
Thank you. And Saul.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Saul. I am a settlement worker with the Menonite New Life Center. I assist and guide newcomers to Canada with employment, housing, education, and other services. Thank you for this opportunity to share my knowledge and my professional experience.
Thank you.
I provide service in Spanish and English.
Yeah, Spanish and English. Thank you. And next up, we have the flow of the session. So we're going to start off with the legal aspects of coming to Canada from Ola, and then we'll merge to the settlement aspects. So housing, childcare, social insurance numbers, educational support, work permits, language, anything that's about kind of living and getting settled in Canada. Saul and Viviana will then give us some details about employment, the various options for employment that are here. And last and absolutely not least is Bita, who will be helping ground all of the things that we do with a wellness perspective and with a personal strength and positive outlook perspective. Given her trauma focused experience, she is amazing. So we will be working on that as well. Amazing panel of experts in our fields. We're very happy to have them all assembled here together for this short time period. So without further ado, Ola, let's start with you. For people who are looking to come to Canada, what are their options?
So I think people should really do their research ahead of time and sort of contemplate if there are any immigration programs that are fitting into their profile. And it also very much depends on the person's situation. So if the goal is to immigrate to Canada and make a new life here, and you're not on a time constraint, you may want to look into options that provide a pathway to permanent residency and check economic programs such as express entry, provincial nomination programs, see for your specific occupation, if there are any programs available that would work for you if it was your profile. And I really recommend getting professional advice on that, because sometimes people are not even aware of some of the programs for immigration to Canada until they talk to somebody specifically and discuss their particular situation. But then also, if you have any relatives in Canada or any connection to Canada, there's also sponsorship programs available. Now, right now, Canada only offers sponsorship for a spouse or common law partner. And there's also a program for sponsorship of children. That would have to be dependent children, most likely. And then there also is a program for sponsorship of parents or grandparents. Now, these programs are sort of have different requirements, there's different documents that you need to provide to show that you are eligible to sponsor, and then the person that's coming that qualify as a person to be sponsored. So again, that's a way to get permanent residency in Canada, but for that you need to have a close connection. There's also a program for sponsorship on other relatives. So if you are interested in coming to Canada and you have a relative in Canada that doesn't have any relatives left in Canada and you don't have any relatives, so it's kind of like two lonely people and you have some relative connection, there is a potential there. But again, it's all very circumstantial, and it needs to be assessed based on your specific situation. So if you're not sure, speak to someone. Some of the forms and some of the information is on the IRCC website, so Government of Canada website, of course, and there are details as to how to complete forms and details of what documents need to be provided. But ultimately, to assess whether you fit into a particular category, whether the immigration program applies to you, you should really do your research and speak to a professional if you can, to see if this is going to work out. And then if you are looking to come to Canada.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. When you said speak to a professional, the field is regulated in Canada, right? So make sure that you're speaking with someone who's not going to give you bad advice in terms of lawyers are a good option. We have immigration consultants, so it's a regulated profession, as well as social service agencies. So those would be the people that you would be looking for, I believe.
Exactly, and thank you. That's a very important point. And I think an organization like MNLCT, they would be able to guide you in the right direction as well. And just again, make sure that you are contacting somebody reliable and that can give you good advice. And then in terms of if you are looking to come to Canada, first and foremost, and if you are in a situation where you're just trying to make your way here and then sort of determine your options long term, you should look into temporary resident options that are also available, and usually these applications are faster in processing if your goal is to get to Canada. So for temporary resident means that you apply for a visa to get status as a visitor, worker, or student. So as a visitor, it's sort of self-explanatory in a sense. As a visitor, you just need to show that you want to come to Canada for a certain, usually short period of time, and kind of describe what you're going to do here, show that you have some funds to cover your stay, and then show connections to your home country that you will be coming back after your stay is over. Then worker, you need to show that you have an opportunity to be employed here, so job offer, that you can be hired by a certain employer, and of course there are rules around that. And then you can come as a student, usually to get a student visa, to get a student status, you would have to be admitted to a educational institution and show proof of admittance before you apply, when you're applying for a student visa, for student temporary resident permit. And then as a separate category, I want to mention that the program that Canada created for Ukrainian people right now that are affected by the war in Ukraine, it's, I'm sure all of you have seen the abbreviation CUAT, Canada Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel. So that's the program that is a program for temporary resident visa, which you, if you apply under that program, you'll get a temporary resident status by default as a visitor. And then if you also applied for a work permit together, so you will get a work permit. And there is an opportunity to also get a student permit if you, that's only for students who are over 18 and admitted to a educational institution. And then, and I think we may, if you have any questions, we may talk a little bit more about that program specifically. And then I just want to briefly mention as an overview that there is also a possibility to claim refugee protection, and that's for people who are fleeing their home country. And while there is an opportunity to make a refugee claim inside Canada and or outside of Canada, but outside of Canada process is quite complicated. So the majority of refugee claims that are made for Canada are made while the person is already here. So either while arriving at the border making a refugee claim, or for those who have arrived having a temporary resident visa, for example, and they make a refugee claim. It's called inland claims. So the claims in Canada are either at the border or inland, so while you're already here. And just briefly for refugee claims specifically, you need to show and convince Canada that you are fearing persecution in your country of origin based on specific grounds that are set. It would be race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. Now, these are general grounds. You need to explain how you fit in one of these categories. And you also need to show that there is no safe place in your country where you could relocate. So if you are facing pursue the case, even if you moved somewhere else in your country. And there are quite some consequences in making a refugee claim. That would mean that they take away your passport. So you cannot leave Canada while the refugee claim is ongoing. You also sign a deportation order together with the documents for your refugee claim. So that means if your refugee claim is not successful, your deportation order takes effect, and you will have to leave Canada. And then even if you are successful and get permanent resident status as a refugee claimant, you making a claim against your home country means that you are not going to be able to go back to your home country. Otherwise, you will be stripped of that permanent residence right, because that's called reavailment. So essentially, if you're saying you're afraid to go to your home country because you fear something, then going back means that your fear is no longer valid, and that is sort of canceling out your permanent resident status. So be mindful of that's a sort of a long-term consequences are there, but I know for a lot of people that may be the only option. And I work with a lot of clients that are making refugee claim, and it's very sad to see some of the situations that people are fleeing from. So that's just a general overview. And if you have specific questions for about any of these sort of pathways, then we can talk more specifically about requirements and how it works and what documents are needed and so on.
Well, I have a question in the Q&A section. Is there any way that someone can get sponsorship if they have no connections or relatives in Canada? If they have specifically for someone who has refugee status in Indonesia, is there any way to get sponsorship while having no connection or relatives here?
I think that's a question that requires more information to know about the circumstances to be able to give you an informed answer. The sponsorship specifically, there is a sponsorship when you're sponsoring your spouse, children, or grandparents, or other relative. That is a connection sponsorship. There's also a separate program that's like a sponsorship group of 5 called, where you're being sponsored by an organization, and the requirements there are pretty specific. Now, so it sounds to me like if there are no connection or relatives there, this could be the option that could be explored further. Now, if someone has a refugee status in another country, it depends on their situation specifically, and what's their citizenship, why did they claim refugee status in another country. Generally speaking, if we're talking about making another refugee claim in Canada, you need to show that you cannot go back to your country of citizenship, and you have nowhere else to go in the world as well. So you don't have permanent residency or citizenship in any other country, because then essentially Canada is not responsible for giving you protection. But again, if we're talking about sponsorship, the rules are a little bit different. So I'd need to have more information to discuss this further.
Thanks. We will be sharing our contact information at the end of the presentation. So Mirza, if you could get in touch with Ola for some, or us for some more specific information, that we may be able to help that way. Another question for you, Ola. Under the group of 5, can you sponsor somebody who's already inside Canada?
For that, I think this is something that would need more information in terms of what that person's status is. If they're on temporary status, there are also issues, because a lot of the times when we're talking about sponsorship, we need to see that the person that's being sponsored is not out of status, that their status hasn't been they haven't overstayed, like if they're not under removal order, if they're already applied under different programs. So there are a lot of consideration there to keep in mind. So again, I'd need to have more information to be able to answer that.
Okay. In Canada, Ukrainians, can they be sponsored under the group of 5? Is that sort of your same answer, or do you want to add something?
I don't know if for Ukrainian people, a group of 5 sponsorship is just like the most efficient pathway. In theory, yes. But practically speaking, and given that the new program for Ukrainian people that's rolled out that I mentioned, and it lets Ukrainian people come to Canada under temporary resident status and stay in Canada for up to 3 years and get a work permit and get a job, essentially. There may be other opportunities that are faster and an easier way to explore in terms of going to permanent residence route. So as I mentioned, for example, if you have a work permit and if you have say a job offer, for example, and if you're employed in some field, and if you have good English and education, you may be a good candidate for express entry and economic pathway programs or provincial nomination programs, and that could be much faster route and much more determined, in the sense that, like, you know what to expect. Like, if you fit into that category, if you are a good candidate, if you get the points, that it could be a good option. Then you could also see if there are any other provinces that have programs for you as well. Again, it depends on the situation. Canada also announced that there will be a sponsorship program for Ukrainians as well, a new sponsorship program that was announced on March 17th, was the details to be provided in the next 6 weeks. As far as I'm aware, there haven't been more details released, so we don't really know how that's going to look like in terms of who's going to be eligible to sponsor, what kind of relative connection is supposed to be there. Just like the details are still unknown, but again, this could be an option, and that is supposed to be the program that leads to permanent residency. So sometimes it's good to wait and see if, for example, that program rolls out, or if there's anything else going to be available. And then specifically for Ukrainian people, I think, well, it's not specific for Ukrainian people. There's also a program that's called Humanitarian Compassionate Grounds Consideration. Now, that's a program that is sort of as a last resort for a lot of people when they don't fit into any other categories. That's an application to get permanent residency status. But to be successful with a humanitarian compassionate grounds application, you sort of need to almost explain preemptively why you don't fit into any other categories. So if economic pathways are not good for you, if you don't have much connection in Canada to be sponsored, but you have compelling reasons to stay in Canada, and such compelling reasons can be, for example, if you don't have much left in your home country, if you came here with kids and your kids are going to school and they're resettling while here, and you're coming from unfortunate circumstances. So even for somebody like coming from Ukraine, where where homes were destroyed and children suffered some stress, this could be a good environment for them to settle in. And then possibly some families may be good candidates to apply under humanitarian compassionate grounds application. Just again, this would have to be very circumstantial. You need to explain why Canada needs to exercise humanitarian compassionate considerations to grant you that permanent status. It used to be that these applications were taking a long time to be processed. By long time, I'm saying a couple of years, maybe 2 to 5 years. During COVID times, I've seen there's been some shift where they're processing them faster. I think the average processing time now on the IRCC website says 15 months. But again, that's not a guarantee. 15 months it's actually pretty good. But again, it's not a guarantee that like if a system gets overwhelmed that the processing is getting delayed. But again, you sort of need to assess your options short-term and long-term and see what programs you fit under. And I do encourage everybody to get some advice. There's a lot of pro bono resources available as well. So it's not, I'm not encouraging people to, go and spend a lot of money on lawyers necessarily, but do talk to someone, even if it's just a consultation that helps you assess your options. Then it's really worthwhile for some people.
Thank you, Ola, very much. That's very helpful. A lot of details in a short amount of time. So the next part, which is getting settled in Canada, and Natalia will be helping us with that. Natalia, one of the most common concerns, and frankly, one of the most challenging, we have talked about this at length, is what is the rental market like? What is the housing market like? How can people get a place to stay here?
Yes, so for immigrants and for refugees, for newcomers in general, when they come to Canada, they want to know where they're going to live, if they're going to be able to afford the price of housing, because everyone wants permanent housing. So when they come to Canada, especially those who apply for asylum, they may be able to get some support from the government to stay at a hotel or Airbnb for a couple of weeks, maybe for months. But maybe the question is, where they are going to find permanent housing. So there are not many options, but there are options, of course. So one of the options is to rent. The market, rental market, which for families who do not have, for example, a stable job, or they do not have a credit score in Canada, it may be a little bit more challenging, because usually when you want to rent an apartment, you need to give first and last month of rent, and you need to commit to a 12-month lease. And usually the landlord asks you for your credit record, your credit score. They ask you for source of income. And sometimes newcomers, they don't have a stable job, or maybe they don't have a job, and they are receiving Ontario Works, the financial support from the government. Still, they may be able to negotiate with the landlord, and in terms of credit score, if they don't have. Also, if they are receiving Ontario Works may be able to cover the cost of rent if it's not too high. But first, they need to find that apartment, basement, house, wherever they can find, and they need to show proof that they found something and they are willing to live there. So Ontario Works can provide that support.
Can you tell a little bit what Ontario Works is?
Yes, so Ontario Works, it's like a government agency that provides employment support and financial support to those who do not have income, those who do not have a stable job, those who are jobless, but maybe they have precarious employment. And Ontario Works, it's a very good support for those who are newcomers, especially refugee claimants. They are entitled to receive that support because, of course, like I said at the beginning, when you come to Canada and you have no place to stay, you have no relatives, no friends, you need a shelter over your head. And that's like emergency support. It's a very, very basic. It's going to cover the price of shelter and food. And it depends also if we're talking about a single individual, if we're talking about a family, if we're talking about a single mother with children, it depends. We have heard about affordable housing. Affordable housing, it doesn't really exist because especially in big cities like Toronto, the price of rent is very high. Still, you may be able to find something that is affordable. So basically affordable, definition of affordable should be 30% of your income. But majority of people, especially newcomers, they pay more than 30% of their income. And sometimes people who are receiving Ontario Works, they are basically paying 90% of their income or the income they receive in rent. There are websites where you can find, you can choose the location you wish to live, the neighborhood. You have a price range where you say, well, this is the maximum I can pay your budget, according to your budget. And then there is a list of affordable housing that we can share. And, but there is a procedure. So like I say, you need to show proof that you have an income, a stable income, a steady income. Sometimes the landlord asks you for references. So you should have some references, but the problem is that you have never lived in Canada. If you have never rent in your life, it's impossible to provide with references. So the situation is challenging, but still people find places. I want to give the idea that, or leave the idea that it's challenging, but at the end of the day, people find places. But affordable is something that you may not be able to find right away, especially if you are on a low income or if you are receiving Ontario Works.
So I wanted to ask what is a typical rent for a single person if they're just getting a bachelor, or for a family that needs a larger, like maybe a 2-bedroom apartment? What kind of rent would
That's a very difficult question.
Is it? Is there a range we could do? Sorry to spring it on you. Yeah.
It depends. For example, you can find bachelors for $1,000. For $2,000, you can find a 1-bedroom for $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, $3,000.
Yeah, it keeps going up. Yeah,
exactly. It depends also the building. If we're talking about a condo, condos are much more expensive. But before the pandemic, like in 2019, the rent was very, very high. Then with during the pandemic, it went down a little bit, and now it's going back up. So yes, so for newcomers, they are going to need help. But still, maybe they have friends, they have relatives that they can, they are connected to their communities. So some people rent their basements and the requirements are not, they don't have too many requirements as in comparison with the landlords or the big buildings, the corporations. And the type of support that they can receive from our agency, from our organization, we can provide with links, we can provide with orientation, and sometimes if they have difficulties connecting with, let's say with the landlord to ask questions, we can maybe able to provide with interpretation services. we do not have a housing program specifically, but we have a lot of information that we can provide, and it's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be very helpful for those who are looking for housing.
We can do referrals as well to other community organizations that focus more on housing. So MNLCT is very well versed in the settlement sector. Even if we don't offer the service specifically like a house, we can connect it. We'll connect to others in the community.
I want to say one more thing. There are shelters. So if individuals they can find anything, they can be placed in shelters, but that is a temporary solution, of course. Yeah. So we're hoping that you know, we have more housing in the future as the government promised. So we're very hopeful. Yes, let's see.
Thank you, Natalia. And I also wanted to ask about language. That was something that Ola had talked about. As you know, if you have stronger language skills, then you may be eligible for more pathways to immigration. What kind of supports can newcomers get for language learning here?
Yes. Well, I think what Ola mentioned was in terms of apply for immigration programs where their language skills is one of the requirements. But for people who are already here, and they are, let's say, refugee claimants or protected persons, convention refugees, permanent residents, they can receive language training for free. There are basically two big programs. One is ESL, English as a second language, and the LINC, language instructions for newcomers. And they can, first, they are going to be assessed in terms of level of English that they have at the moment. And then they are going to be placed in a class. They can start with level 1, 2, 3, 4, it depends. There are many levels. They are going to be assessed at the YMCA. There is like average assessment that everyone are entitled to do. And then they can be registered to receive ongoing classes like full-time, part-time, and they get certificates. So that is something that they can advance, you know, they should advance with the language training because it's very important if they want to settle in Canada, if they want to have like a very strong integration, if they want to further, you know, their life with, you know, education and good opportunities in terms of employment. It's, I would say that is mandatory that they can improve their language skills and they can have a better life because that's for sure that if they accomplish that.
If I may interrupt here
yes.
as well. I think this is very relevant for people that are coming here with a temporary resident status, because if they are looking to convert that temporary status into a permanent one, and if they are looking at economic options such as express entry, provincial nomination programs, specific programs for their profession, then English would be a test that they need to take and show a high level of English skill, and it counts for a lot. So this is very relevant, and I do encourage people to take advantage of being able to use these resources.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ola.
Does anyone have, I don't see any questions around housing or language, so I'm going to move on to jobs, employment at this point.
Can I just add on housing specifically? And this has been a very relevant issue with the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. And as people are coming here, I think it's very important to do research and know your options even before coming to Canada. And even when coming to Canada, make sure you contact reliable organizations to guide you through it. Again, I cannot stress this enough because in Canada and in other countries right now, there are issues with people offering private hosting for displaced persons from Ukraine and other countries. And it's very important to make sure that you know, you're safe, or like if your family members are going to Canada or somewhere else, make sure that they're safe. There are guidelines on how to ensure that, but also talk to organizations that can help you through it. Don't just arrange it on your own and hope for the best.
Very good point. There's a lot of people around the world, Canada is no exception, who will take advantage of newcomers who are not sure what's going on. So 100% agree. Quick question around LINC. Ukrainians are not eligible for LINC, only ESL, is that right? No, they are also eligible for the LINC program. Just an aside on that, things are changing every day on the Ukrainian situation. Programs, the federal government makes a mandate, and the provincial government needs to get their things aligned as well. So as of today, LINC is also available for Ukrainian people under the, do you say SUET? Or do you say the whole thing? CUEAT? The program. Okay, so moving on to employment then. So language is very important. We have language will help with your job search strategies and your success in job searching. But that's not the only thing. There's a lot of different types of jobs available. There's survival jobs. There's restarting your professional career. Getting hired is not always straightforward. Even though there are a good number of jobs. So let's talk to Saul about what's the difference between a survival job and a professional job or career. We'll talk about professional jobs in a few minutes, but really, what do we mean by a survival job?
Okay, this is the most recurrent question for me about employment. How to get a job, what kind of job can I get? A survival job for a newcomers or for immigrants, this is sometimes the first job. Finding a job is not the only challenge you face in Canada. You also have to adapt a new culture, a new language. Canada has two official languages, French and English, work environment, and also the weather. Sometimes the condition, the weather, sometimes don't realize the weather is gonna affect the job that they're gonna find. Sometimes you have to decide which province you want to go. Sometimes it's really extreme the weather. If you're living in the east or west, it depends on the city, and this is the kind of job you can find. If you are finding a survival job, when you decide to come to this country, you must be careful with your budget, because Natalia mentioned the rent is so expensive, especially in cities like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. If you don't have enough budget, it's gonna be a problem, and survival job is an option. And sometimes the people think it's not a good idea. The people have a lot of expectation because they have a lot of credential, and sometimes it's a problem. But survival jobs is not just it's a money to pay the rent or the other bills. It's to get a Canadian work experience, practice the language, because we are, as I mentioned, we are this country. There are two languages. It depends the province. Basically, Quebec is French, or New Brunswick is a bilingual province. But find a job is a process. But to get a survival job is to get connection. You never know that place that you are working. Maybe it's an opportunity to build a networking. Maybe you change a profession. I want to share my experience. I have to study another thing, and I was decided to get, because I was working in a restaurant sector. Maybe I want to be a chef. I want to be a social worker. It was a difficult decision, but it was my first experience in Canada. And survival jobs give me idea what is the option to find a job, to get more skills in a different profession. Survival jobs should be a part of the process, getting where you want to be. It will be a temporary solution, as I mentioned, because it's a process. Any person is different. If you are with your family, maybe it's a different process if you are single. If you have a partner, if you have a family, and this is going to take a process. Some professions are easy in this sector, in the survival job. For example, customer service, factory workers, Uber drivers, waiters, construction workers, fast food, or some areas. But this is just for entrance. It's not for a permanent job. This is a job that is gonna give you the chance to pay the cost of the life.
Pay cost of living, you get experience, yes, like you mentioned. Yeah. What are some of the things, sometimes when people come and for survival jobs, if they stay within their language communities, or sometimes even outside of their language communities, there's exploitation can take place. You know, oh, you're here, you can work under the table, so it's not an official job, but you can do these things. What are things that people need to be careful about so that they're not taken advantage of?
Yes, it's true, because you are in a comfort zone, and sometimes you don't want to risk the other jobs because the language, the experience. But this is a challenge. When you are here, you're gonna face a lot of challenge. Let me mention about the salary, about the survival job, because that is important. For example, we are living in Ontario. The minimum wage is at $15. I'm gonna share a link, and you can compare the different salaries, the minimum wage for each province. It depends, because the cost of life is more expensive and the salary is a little better, or is less. It depends on the province if you are deciding. If you decide to come to Canada, you have to do a lot of research about the places, the provinces that you are planning to go, because that is important to what is the option, what is the offers for you. It's not just the profession. You see, in the pandemic, everything is changed. The job that before it was normal, everything is different. We are seeing people that they are working from home. That is getting normal. And maybe this is an option. It could be for different profession, technology.
So what's required for a job? In order for people to have an official job, they need a social insurance number and eligibility to work?
It depends of the clients. For example, if we are talking about for a refugee claimant, they have to apply for a work permit. After they apply for the work permit, they need to apply for the social insurance number, and they can work. And that could be different for any immigrants.
We have a question. Is it possible to work for cash? Is that legal?
I think it's not legal, but it's the people this is the way they need to find a job. And sometimes if they work in that way, in the catch, maybe the salaries could be less. And sometimes the employers abuse about, sometimes don't receive the payment. That is a complicated. It's better to get a social insurance and receive a check but it's I don't know. It's better. Sometimes when you receive a cash, something is not clear because the employer tried to avoid pay taxes.
Right. That's one of the flags for labor exploitation, labor trafficking is if you're only paid in cash. I mean, there's a bit of a gray market, I guess, for people. You know, babysitters, they pay them in cash. Sometimes other companies pay in cash, but
yes, if they pay cash, maybe they don't pay for the benefits. This is another issue. It's better to receive properly payment.
It's better to receive the proper payment, and you also get, once you have the registration, your social insurance number, you are eligible for benefits because you've been working. Then you start to accrue your employment insurance benefits, for example. If you're sick and you need to take time off, if you've only been working for cash, you don't have that history to be able to rely on these social benefits. So
for the pension, that is important. Think about the pension is in the future. You are put money for the future. When you are when the employer pay, they take an amount for your pension. It's not just the benefit. This is another reason that the cash is no good idea. But I cannot say if I cannot suggest the clients or the immigrants don't do that. It's a difficult decision for them.
Sorry, Saul, can I add something?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people do not have work permits. They do not have authorization to work, but they need to work because they need an income. They are living in Canada, and they cannot apply for a social insurance number. The risk happens when the client, when the individual, the worker has an accident, for example. If they don't have healthcare insurance, then it's going to be, it can be problematic. But like people who are eligible to work, it's better that they can work with a social insurance number, that they can be registered, pay the taxes. But sometimes we have to also address or recognize that there are people who cannot work in any other manner because they don't have the work permit. And
what about an entrepreneur, Natalia? Is it, I mean, I know that's different. Different. If you set up your own business, you're not an employee anymore. Is that an option for people?
It's always an option to be an entrepreneur. There are other procedures. If you are an entrepreneur, you have to register your business. You need to decide the type of legal organization you're going to have. If it's a corporation, if it is a partnership, and so on and so forth. But it's different. They are not working for cash. When you're an entrepreneur, you are registered. You have your business registered. You're going to, or you have to private practice. If you're an immigration consultant, you have to claim whatever you make.
That's right.
Yes. So, but like the question is it possible to work for cash? Yes, a lot of people work for cash. It's possible, but there are risks. But it depends on your situation, especially for those who do not have a work permit. Yeah, it may be more difficult.
Thank you.
I just want to add 2 quick comments. If for people that are working and are not sure about their work conditions, or if you're not sure about your rights, you can get legal advice. You can get free legal advice to know what your rights are. And if you feel like there's something wrong, get advice to make sure that you are protected and that you know your rights. And if your employer is not offering what they're supposed to, then maybe it's not a good employer to stick with. And then second comment I want to make is, if you are working in Canada and you do not have a work permit and you are not legally authorized to work in Canada, you are violating conditions of your status. So that means that in the future that you're applying for a different program, for example. So if, for example, you're here as a visitor, you don't have a work permit and you start working, and then you meet somebody, you get married and you want to be sponsored, you working without valid authorization, if it comes to immigration authorities, that can be potentially an issue with you getting a status in the future. So be very mindful of working without, like, I would not recommend doing it, just because that violates your conditions of your stay, and that can potentially mean that you will be prevented from being able to get permanent resident status in the future under other programs.
Good consideration. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Now about the career planning, the difference is our goal is clients to move closer to their desired career. Is when we offer professional orientation and personal and employment services. Examples, we support the clients to make a resume, cover letter, job interview. We provide guidance to individuals with information, skill, experience they need to identify career option and find the best fit. This is the difference to be survival job and career planning. We have a plan, and this is it's not just for a job, it's education also, because it's not necessary find a job for right away, but also it's to make a plan about education, a plan, maybe to check what is the options. Sometimes they need a credential recognition. This is another issue. They have a lot of credential, but sometimes there is not enough the recognition, and they try to move a different programs like a bridge program to get the recognition.
Yeah, just because you start in a survival job doesn't mean that you're necessarily stuck there. That it's a good way to get started as you start to plan out your career and the steps that you need to take for that.
Correct.
I'd like to, you mentioned credential recognition and bridging programs. I'd like to bring in Viviana to give us some information about that kind of aspect of the professional careers. We know that in Ukraine, public education is free, and so many people have post-secondary education and professional careers. What is the job market like for professionals who want to restart their careers? Can you give us some information about that, Viviana?
For that, I would like to make a comment about the cash money. When it is about cash, it is understood that it is illegal under the table. However, it is okay to pay in cash as long as you get a pay slip, and right, as long as you are paid the minimum wage, right? So as long as you get your pay slip is fine, and also you have rights in employment about even if you are getting cash. Also, I want to reinforce the language training that is highly important. So for people who come here, one of the first things I always recommend is an English assessment. An English assessment can be in Toronto, in GTA, the official organization is YMCA. Outside Toronto is Achieve. And there are also small ones in other small cities, but also there is a link where, according to your city in Ontario, where do you go? My knowledge is Ontario, right? But there are also in all Canada might be other official organizations. But it's just very important. Why? Because many programs for newcomers, you must have your credential assessment in order to qualify to be eligible for that program. So as soon as you come, and it's free, right? The assessment. So as long as you come, get your language assessment, because this will be helpful if you want to go to a LINC program. Also, I want to expand on the language training. Other than LINC programs, there is also the ELT programs, which is a kind of a LINC program, but is targeted to profession. For instance, if somebody has a background in finance, they can find ELT program, English language training, focus on people in finance background. So at the same time, they are going to improve their English, but with people who are in their same environment, in the same, and that is important. And also it's important because they will learn that workplace Canadian experience, the workplace Canadian, right? The Canadian workplace culture. So that is very important, how to write email, how to communicate in Canada. There are going to be tips, so it's very important. So generally is the LINC and well, LINC with ESL or ELT with also the OELT. OSLT provided by colleges. So these are focuses more for certain professions. LINC is more colloquial and ELT is more targeted to professions. Right? So then there are coming the bridge programs, who are programs funded also by the government where you transition into your own career. Like in Mennonite New Life Center, we have 4 bridging programs. One is BREM, who is for professionals in the mental health sector. And also it's a long bridging program if you are going to apply to become a licensed psychotherapist here in Canada. The other program is BEMC, who is for professionals in communication, journalism, media. They are going to transition into this sector. The other one is BESIP, that is a program for professionals outside Canada as well, that wants to transition wants to transfer their skills in the social services here. So there are many, right? Like, let's say that a lawyer cannot work, well, I need to speak first about there are professions that are regulated and non-regulated, right? So regulated professions are professions that in order to work in your, to work as in your profession, you need to get a license here in Canada. Those are medical doctors, lawyers, engineers, architects, and many others, psychologists. And there are other professions that you don't need a license here in Canada, like you can be as an economist and many other fields. So there is a list that you are regulated and non-regulated. So if you have worked like a psychologist in your country, here you cannot work as a psychologist, right? You need to have a bridging if you want to work in psychotherapy. And so the basic program, let's say that you are a lawyer and here you cannot work as a lawyer. You can transfer your skills. Maybe you can work in settlement or in a related social service job that have these components of law. So you can do something, or maybe you are a teacher who is regulated too. And you can, it's a career also to help. You are always constant customer service. So you can transfer your skills to work in social services. Or maybe you have worked in the medical sector in your country. So also in social services, there are so many areas. There are in health department, working with kids, working with seniors, working with mental health, legal. There are so many areas that can be a way to transition. Or maybe you simply don't want to continue working in your field, right? And then there is another program that is called See Women, that is for people that identify as women and they have education outside. So here they can learn coding. So these are the 4 bridging programs that we have at Mennonite New Life Center. There are other bridging programs outside as well. I believe there are for architects, like for engineers, architects is work in your field. Is that you cannot sign as an engineer. You cannot be called an engineer, but maybe you can do something related to engineering under the supervision of an engineer. The same as an architect. You cannot sign as an architect, but you can work in your field, and most probably you will require to work in your field in order to qualify to one day be an architect, and that is going to be in the College of Architects or the College of Engineers. So each regulated profession has their own entity. And also can be by province, right? If you are to work in Ontario, you need to go to a specific organization for engineers here in Ontario. If you are going to work in, if you are going to live in another province, you might need to approach to another, or maybe to do another exam, right? To be qualified in that province. The bridging programs, the qualifications for the bridging programs, it's you need to be resident of Ontario, you need to be 18 years old or more, you need to be a permanent resident or a protected person, meaning a refugee claimant or convention refugee with a work permit. You need to be a naturalized Canadian. You can be naturalized Canadians are the ones who born outside Canada, but they became Canadians here in Canada. And also recently, also it's eligible to be in the Ukrainian refugee status, the CUAET, also is qualified. Also, you need to have education outside Canada and each in the field that you are applying. For instance, at Mennonite, if you are applying for BREM, your background, educational background needs to be in something related to mental health, psychology or social work, something related to mental health. BEMC, your background needs to be related to communications, media, journalism. BESIP, it doesn't matter as long as you have a post-secondary education, and C women as long as you have high school from outside Canada. Also, you need to have 2 years experience outside Canada, 2 years working experience outside Canada.
So Saul was talking a bit about this, and I started to talk about it. It's the credential assessment. So you have your skills and experience. Yeah, that's what's next. Awesome.
Something that is very important as well is that in order to qualify for some programs, you need to have a credential assessment, meaning that needs to be recognized your 4 years bachelor degree outside or 3 years bachelor degree outside is equivalent to what degree here in Canada. So there are official organizations who do this here. Like in Ontario, there are 3 main ones, is WES Canada, ICAS, and the Comparative Education Service by UFT. Also in other provinces might be others, okay? But here in Canada, I'm sorry, in Ontario, there is this one. So my suggestion, if you are still outside your outside Canada and still you are in your country and you want to get your credential assessed, my recommendation will be to go into their websites and to see what are the documents that they need from your country, because many times it's country by country. They won't need the same document from each country, because the challenge is that once the immigrant comes here, they find out, oh, I need this seal by my university, I need this document from this, but I don't have anybody in my country to do that for me. I wish I would have known before, so I would have brought that for me, right? So, or maybe, oh, I didn't bring any diploma here, I not even have that. And then they might not have the way to get it. So my suggestion will be, if you still are not here and still you have that, get into their websites and check what are the documents that you need to bring, so then you can have that. In order to work here in Canada, you won't require necessarily a credential assessment, but sometimes they need. It depends which career you have and which program you will go. Like if you are applying for BREM, for instance, for the bridging program for mental health, you need a credential assessment that is at least equivalent 4 years bachelor degree in Canada, equivalent. Because sometimes in some countries, some bachelor's degree are not equivalent to bachelor's degree here. Right?
Thank you. Thanks very much. So for our last few minutes, I'd like to speak with Vita. We've been focusing a lot on the task-oriented parts of getting settled in Canada, but we really haven't touched at all on a major piece of the process, which is people's emotional resettling. Vita, can you talk to us about a bit about that process that happens and how we can help?
Thank you, Tracy. I would like to invite all of us to be aware of our body and breath for a few seconds right now to see how we feel about the information we just received. If you feel comfortable, even you can close your eyes and observe your experience. Sometimes we may feel overloaded. I was listening to my colleagues and I said, oh my God, it's lots of information now, right? This is how we may feel when we are new in a country. So lots of information to process, and sometimes we may blame our memory, right? But the truth is that most of the times it is just lots of information to process. So change is very fast. It just happens. So to name a few, the weather, the language, the culture, and when it comes to forced migration, this change includes recent difficult events, the losses that we have gone through, loss of home, loss of loved ones, our job, our country. Also, the anxiety of an unknown future. I saw in the comments, people like they are now in Indonesia and they were talking about their condition there and the unknown future and how scary it can be, right? So going through all these changes at once can be very tough for so many people. So transition is an emotional response to change, and transition is slow. Change is fast, but transition is slow. So it comes with different emotions, such as shock, anger, frustration, stress, and also hope for a new beginning, right? And this is true when we are doing something new in our life. We can experience excitement, and at the same time, we may experience fear. And all these emotions have an impact on our decision-making and on our behavior, right? For those who have experienced very tough events in their countries, such as war, it is important to reprocess all these experiences. And it's a way to treat trauma. Because if we do not treat trauma, the impact of these experiences can remain in the human system, and the person may experience something that is called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, where the individual can easily feel triggered like by anything and re-experience the trauma symptoms as if the individual is reliving the same thing again and again. So people may feel they are stuck in time, nothing is moving forward. So if I'm in fear, I'm going to be alert of all the time. I'm alert, my nervous system is always alert. And sometimes I may develop avoidant behavior just to avoid feeling that fear. And that can cause us to feel that we are stuck. We have seen many newcomers that when they share their experience, they say it seems to be stuck, or they say that we are feeling that we are frozen, right? So, and they have the tendency to procrastinate things or the tasks that they need to do, and they isolate themselves, they withdraw themselves. So different behaviors are associated with the emotions that they experience during the transition process. Now, why this is so important to pay attention to all these emotions? Because if we address these emotions in a compassionate way, I want to, just wait a second here, because compassion is the most important thing. The transition process is hard by itself, so compassion is the key. We can understand why these emotions are there, how to process these emotions, and then we will be in a better condition to solve the problems and make realistic and wise decisions and take necessary actions. So there are losses and gains in any change. There are positive aspects in any change. Therefore, despite going through difficult experiences of loss, changes also might be considered as an opportunity for growth and improvement of some aspects of our life that maybe without that change and without that transition process, it couldn't occur, right? So the main idea is to learn how to regulate and manage these emotions in a compassionate way to have a successful and smooth transition. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. The emotions exist. They're going to happen whether you acknowledge them or not, right? So
exactly.
So take care of them. Canada is very much more open about taking care of your emotional well-being and your overall health, physical and mental health, than places where some of our displaced people and our refugees are coming from. So know that there is support here. It might be more than you're used to, but it's something that you can access in Canada, mental health support. Can you talk about the supports available for refugee claimants, particularly?
Yeah. We actually in Mennonite New Life Center, we have services through our wellness place that we can provide psychotherapy or counseling for refugee claimants. All they need to have is just a referral letter from their family physician or GP. So this is one thing. Another thing is that also we provide mental health services in Mennonite for other like immigrations and people with other immigration status. And yeah, we have individual counseling sessions. Also, we have support groups for men and women. They are like language specific or culturally specific. We have provided like parenting services for different schools and newcomer families. And also we have had like programs that for youth and children, right? How to manage their emotions, like for emotional intelligence, actually. So we have really different programs for like different population.
Yeah, and it helps not only does it help your personal well-being, but it can also support your refugee claim, right? Some of your immigration processes can be supported by documenting your experiences and how you're emotionally managing these experiences and how you're working towards a healthier life. So
yeah,
it's not just for you mentally, but also for your immigration journey.
Exactly. That what we do sometimes we provide like advocacy letters that can help the immigration process and the hearings if they have any. Yeah.
Thank you very much for grounding us, Ita, all of the work we've done today. So we have a few minutes left for more questions in general mental health questions, emotional health questions.
And can I add a little bit, Tracy? Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it is not just the mental health services or the counseling. We have other programs in general in Mennonite. One of the strengths is that we always mental health is a piece. We incorporate mental health in all programs, and we look at all the programs like with a holistic approach. So, for example, we have LICE program that is a language training. It's functional language for those who have experienced trauma. They may have some issues with the memory or cognition, so they need a more compassionate and safer space to learn language. So with that LICE program, we provide both the training and also the mental health counseling and mental health support so that it improves people's, like, let's say, cognition and emotion state, right? And also we have HOPES programs that my colleagues, they mentioned a little bit, right? So what is different in hopes comparing to other employment programs in the province is that we consider this emotion and mental health piece in employment, so that people, they can redefine their goals, their employment goals, and get the support that they need and plan for their career, right? It can be like finding a job, or it can be like entrepreneurship. We have entrepreneurship program under the hopes, right? So we have different services that we have this holistic approach. Yeah, I wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, 100%.
And I just wanted to add to that, or just kind of, I guess, sum up what we've discussed a little bit. I always encourage my clients and just people to reach out to me to take advantage of all these resources available. Mental help with employment, with your CV, with finding housing, with finding jobs. Like, there are resources available for you. And I think it's important. Exactly. And a lot of people don't realize it, but then I also see that different cultures kind of approach it differently. And for some people, and I know like even in Ukrainian culture, it's kind of like sometimes people are hesitant to reach out for support, or just kind of try and figure it out themselves. And I think it's very important to get that help and integrate yourself in the society faster. It'll be easier for you in the long run. So sort of don't be shy, reach out, and I think it'll benefit you greatly.
Thank you. And we've done a lot of talking about the newcomers themselves. I know there are some people here who are supporting newcomers. What advice, and this is for anyone, what advice would you give to someone who is trying to support a newcomer? Either they're part of a group of 5, or they have a family member that's coming and they're needing to get somebody set up in Canada.
I think it can be overwhelming for a person coming, but also sometimes it's a bit overwhelming for people that are also supporting, just because in our daily lives, we don't deal with all these questions, or we kind of have it already figured out and we don't think about it twice. And then even I'm seeing it from my personal experience. Some people are asking me questions and I'm like, I don't know anymore, or I haven't thought about it for a long time, or I don't have to worry about like updating my CV on a regular basis, right? So and I think for us here in Canada, it's important to sort of keep track and know what resources are available. So then if we are not able to answer these questions, we are able to refer people to organizations, specialists, professionals that can give that help as appropriate. And I think organizations like MNLCT, it's a good resource because you have so many different services available, and this would be like a one-stop shop in a sense to answer a lot of them as well. And then I also think it's important to get community support as well. So it's very good to introduce people to, like, if you're a Canadian and you are supporting somebody that's coming to Canada, the best thing you can do is help them build their network so they can get help, they can get these connections, and they can integrate themselves. And it's important not only for their jobs, not only for their English, but also for their immigration programs sometimes as well. I guess kind of bringing it back, because sometimes for some programs, we want to show that the person has integrated themselves in the Canadian society and they are a good candidate to stay here and build a life here. And in all of the applications that I'm preparing, I'm always including a component that this person is going to be a productive member of a society, that they're going to be, they already demonstrated that they've come so far, they've overcome like personal, emotional trauma, whatever have you, but they are building a new life here, and Canada should support them and give them that opportunity. So it's important to help them through the process.
I agree. I think that the last sort of, I'll take one more. I see Natalia's unmuted herself.
Yes, briefly, I would like to reaffirm what Ola was saying in terms of for host families and for people who are coming to Canada, just to learn about the resources. Because in my experience, I learned that some people, even families who are sponsoring refugees, they feel overwhelmed because they don't know how to support them. For, let's say, for a healthy integration process, it's very, very important that newcomers get connected to their communities in many, many different ways. So they can tackle all the different areas that are important for a healthy integration, like, to name, a language, a social connection, education, volunteer experience, finding a survival job to get Canadian experience, always thinking that there will be something better, with the idea of, improving themselves, but also to be patient and just to enjoy the journey. Because sometimes it's important to put attention on basic needs and how to meet those basic needs, but it's very important also to get to know Canada and to get to know the other cultures, to try different things, to make this process something that enriches us and make us feel that this is a good opportunity, without minimizing the impact, of having to leave our countries in many different situations, because the reasons we are here are different. For some people, it's by choice. For some people, it's just to reunite with their families. For some people, it's because of displacement. So the level of trauma is different because our experiences are different. But at the end of the day, I would say to be a newcomer is a very challenging journey, but we should be able also to grow and to enjoy. But
to enjoy
resources, getting information and resources, it's key.
And for the sponsor to not feel that it's all on them. They're not a settlement professional. They're not a legal expert. They have, what they can offer is their love, their support, their caring and compassion, their friendship, and guidance as they reach out to other organizations and get this support from the experts. But at the end of the day, it's nice to have one person that you can count on in Canada that's helping you and is connecting you. Your advantage, the sponsor's advantage, is the networks and how they can really integrate people in and offer those inside connections that are more difficult for an organization to be able to offer, right? So everybody plays a role in welcoming people into our communities. The newcomers themselves play a role in welcoming themselves into the communities and integrating. We all play a role. So thank you all so much. I know we've gone over a little bit. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your expertise as panelists. Thank you to our attendees for your great questions, and for being here, for showing up for newcomers, and for wanting to make this experience the best that it can be. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Leticia. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day, evening, depending on where you are. All the very best to you. Take care. Bye-bye.